Hi, my friends. Welcome to the Grow There with Cheria podcast. When I was about 6 or 7, I was in my room playing, and I had a very active imagination, and who knows what I was thinking about when all of a sudden I thought about dying. And I thought about being buried in a casket. And I thought about what if I am buried in a casket, but then it turns out that I'm not dead yet. I'm actually alive, but I'm buried and no one can help me. And I panicked. I ran out, and my mom was in the kitchen on a corded phone talking to somebody who knows who. And and she goes, "What's up, Shay?" And I say, "Mom, what happens if I get buried and I'm still alive and nobody knows it and I'm stuck underground and I'm freaking out?" And she lifts up her little phone and she goes, "I'm going to have to call you back," and hangs up the phone. And she gets down on my level and she says, "You know what, Shay? Sometimes all you need is a little bit of prayer and popcorn." And she proceeded to go pop us some popcorn, and we sat on the couch. I'm sure we said a little prayer, and that was it. I don't even really remember her addressing my concern. Like, don't remember her proving to me that that could not happen. But the time that she took with me, the space that she made for me was enough. And when I think about that story, you'd think that the sweet little alliteration of prayer and popcorn is what stood out to me. In fact, my mom never used that again. Like she never used that again, but it's pretty cute. But that's not really what stood out to me. What stood out was when she said, "I'm going to need to call you back." And she hung up that phone. My mom is someone who has always seen me and made space for me when I needed it. And she raised really independent girls. But when we needed her, she was always there. And I cannot tell you how appropriate it feels for me to have the woman who her her life in and of itself taught me about having a growth mindset. And I can't wait for you to meet her. She's going to tell you all about her life. And she's gonna probably jump all over the place knowing my mom, but I'm gonna let her introduce herself through her story. And this might be the first of many podcast episodes with my mom because she might just deserve a show for every season. Let me know what you think. So without further ado, it is time to grow there with the one, the only, my mom, Dr. Josette Brown. Hi, mom.
Hi, Shay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
I love the way you just said hi, Shay. I was thinking about how special it is that we're doing this because I'm about to tell the world of some illegal activity that I've been doing, which is when I call my 97-year-old grandfather, I am secretly recording him. And it's it's
If
because
I know Grandpa, he's loving it. He's loving it.
yeah.
Trust
But I was thinking about how special it is that I don't know that I have any recording of you and me talking besides when we were kids, maybe of
me. Yeah.
just us having a conversation, you know? It's been a long I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure I have lots of actually, that's not true. Last holiday when you were teaching us how to knit,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I recorded that. You guys
Yeah.
gave much crap about it because I wasn't paying attention to learning how to knit, but I wanted to be the historian.
I
But
remember I
mom
do have some recording though, Shay, when you and Janelle were really little and Janelle was saying her ABCs and I think you were
Mhm.
singing the song. I can't remember. We had some little
Yes,
conversation.
we have a tape of it, and it's funny
Yeah.
because that tape is in your house somewhere, and what's really
Mm-hmm.
messed up about it is that Janelle does say her ABCs at the very end of that, you're trying to get Janelle to say goodbye, but she's
Mhm.
feeling shy.
Mhm.
And you're like, come on, say goodbye. And then it cuts off
Mhm.
to junior high version of Cheria singing a song that I'd written.
I know where that tape is too. I know
Yeah,
where it
it's
is.
embarrassing. It goes from really cute to really embarrassing.
Oh,
Poor Janelle. Well, okay, you know why we're here, but for people who are watching, uh, I like to reiterate that there's 2 reasons why I'm doing this podcast. The first is that I am just kind of personally obsessed with growth, and I get that from you because you have always been someone who just keeps growing yourself and challenged us to keep growing ourselves all the time. And so that's one area. And so what better way to grow than to talk to the brilliant people in my life? But the second reason is because this is almost a little bit of a research project for me because one of my hypotheses, I guess, is that some of the biggest growth in our lives happen when work and life intersect. And
mhm,
usually it's something in our personal life that impacts us professionally, or something in our professional life that impacts us personally, or sometimes it's just lots of things going on at once and it's all just muddled together. But those are when some of our most powerful moments of growth happen. So
mhm.
I could not do this podcast without having you come on to talk about a time in your life when that happened, when something in your personal life really impacted your professional life, or something in your professional life really impacted your personal life. So I'm going to get out of the way for a little bit to let you maybe tell us a story and then we'll talk about it.
Okay. Well, I would say that the most significant thing in my personal life that affected my growth in my professional life was when I got divorced. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you're familiar with that time. You
I'm
and your
just a little
sister
familiar.
and your sister were just in college and it had been a long time coming and all, but um I was at that time I had just gone back to working. I had in the previous years I had had a little career in banking. When you guys were little, I was pretty much a stay-at-home mom, but I also started going to school later on and
Mhm.
I picked up a few jobs in between working at Light and Life for a little bit. And actually, that was where one of the places where life really changed for me, working at Light and Life with you guys being at the school. I started as the
Yeah.
librarian, but I ended up teaching despite the fact that I had no degree. I
Yeah.
had a good relationship with the kids. And so the principal said, just, do you want to teach? So I ended up teaching for 3 years.
Yeah.
Um, and then I decided I really want to teach and I want to get my credential. And that's when I went back to school. So I went back to school with the intention of getting my credentials to teach little ones. But the older you guys got, the more I felt maybe not the little ones anymore. So, but I want to continue with my degree. So I started out getting my AA at Citrus College. Then let's see, when did I start working for non consulting? I believe
Well,
that guys,
you got your sorry, just for
right.
clarification, 'cause you got did you get your AA before you started teaching 3rd grade?
No. Uh-uh.
Oh, okay.
I did not.
That's
I got my
amazing.
AA. I know, it's crazy. I think
The
I was
what
in the middle of it though.
You were the most magical teacher of all time. I wanted to be in your class so bad, and the fact that I got to go into your classroom and see what you were teaching kids to do was so cool. I mean, you made a 6-foot paper mache whale with your kids, and it
That's
must
right.
I think
Mhm.
right? It was 6 I think I was trying to think. I
It
was
was
like,
at
"It's
least 6
I have
feet.
6
Yeah.
feet." Yeah.
Mhm.
It was
I have
huge.
pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, or the Willy Wonka's chocolate factory,
Yep. Yep.
she would build out these huge dioramas. The kids would bring every
Mhm.
piece of candy they had, and they'd create this castle of chocolate, and it was just so your classroom was the most magical place to be. You were
It was
so
so fun.
passionate about teaching. Yeah,
It was so fun, and I remember being bummed about getting that classroom because it was huge, and it had this
mm,
big space in the back that was like a lab, and so that ended up being the place where it was a creative area, and we did so much cool stuff.
yeah,
I had a few computers, nobody else had computers. I always wanted learning to be fun, not
yeah,
just something to do and bring the kids down and homework and all that stuff. We went
yeah.
on field trips. It was just really, really fun, really fun.
Yeah, you I think that's the thing, and my that makes sense why I'm so obsessed with growth is you've always made growth and learning fun. And I know I'm gonna let you get back to your story, but I think it's already just the fact that you didn't have your degree, and you were
Yeah.
able to teach because you were in a private school,
Mhm.
but and we had great teachers at that school, but going
We did.
into your classroom was otherworldly. It was you were someone who and maybe it was partially because you didn't have your degree, you worked so hard to create an incredible learning environment, and it was so clear. Anyways, I've interjected. Let's go back to
Okay.
so so
I think I
you taught, then when we were in maybe high school, more adjusted, you went and worked for a consulting, you worked for non-consulting.
correct. Yeah, I worked for non-consulting, which I also thoroughly enjoyed that job, and it was because I was with a small organization in LA. And we did consulting to nonprofit organizations, and I got to see all this amazing work that was being done out mostly in the greater Los Angeles area, but we're going all the way up north to San Francisco, down south to San Diego, just helping all these different nonprofits. Our motto pretty much was anything a nonprofit needed, we could do.
Yeah.
It was just really, really fun, a lot of fun. And, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I probably never would have quit that job, but in between, I saw
Mhm.
one of our clients come in, and she was defending for her degree. I had
Mm,
no clue what that meant at the time. I had no
mm.
clue, but there was this big hoopla about her getting her PhD, and it really stuck with me. So I started chugging along, working there. I worked there about 8 years, and then we had to close our doors. I was the last person that left. When we closed our doors, that's when I ended up at Southern California Edison.
Mhm.
And that ended up being a magical job for me as well. It was the Energy Education Center. So it seemed like no matter where I went or what I did, I ended up with some kind of teaching job. Even back
Yeah.
with, the little consulting agency, a few times I was allowed to go, and do some kinda training things, so
Yeah.
I didn't mention this, but I also before I even got married, I had a career in banking where I
That's
ended up having my own training center. So, I think my heart and my passion was always to teach in any
yeah.
kinda way, and the universe just seemed to always make it happen.
I vaguely remember that before I was born, you were running that training center.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I quit right I was in my ninth month when I quit, my ninth month of pregnancy when I quit.
Wow.
Right over here in walking distance from where I live now, where was my
Wow.
training center in West Covina. So, at California Edison was an amazing job. It was just amazing. I
Mhm.
loved everything about it. And as an energy education center, again, it was all about educating our
Yeah.
customers about energy efficiency and energy, um, conservation and all this stuff. I loved it. During the time I was there, I continued with my degrees. I just kept going to school. I loved Edison, and one of the reasons I chose Edison because it was a company that gave us educational reimbursement. So
Mm.
I was jazzed about that. I'm like, "Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I could get my degrees, and not
Yeah.
have to pay for it." So I kept going, just
Wait,
kept
can
going.
I let me stop
Mhm.
you because we started this story with the big kind of moment was when you got divorced. But
Oh,
I know
yeah,
you
and I
got
haven't even said
divorced,
anything about
but this shows how passionate you are about always finding yourselves in a position to be teaching, training, helping people learn, right?
Right, right.
Like you've already gotten carried away. But the divorce happened somewhere in there. When did the divorce
Yeah.
happen, and what happened after the divorce that shifted your mentality or
Okay.
approach or whatever?
Thanks for reeling me back in, Shay, because I was just telling my story. Okay, so when the divorce happened, it was not an easy divorce, and I ended up basically having to start all over again. And that's
Mm,
everywhere from finances to just creating my own life again and creating a life for the girls and I. And so I had to decide what I'm going to do. I stayed with the little nonprofit, or I mean, with the little company or the small company. It was growing, but we already knew at the time that things weren't looking real well there. And I knew eventually I was going to get let go of.
mhm,
So I had to make a major shift. And truth of the matter is, when I decided that to get the divorce, I knew I was going to have to find another job because the consulting agency was going under.
yeah,
So I think it just drove me at that point. I wanted to never again have to depend on someone. I wanted to be able to take care of me.
yeah,
I think in the back of my head, I was always wanted to teach. So it seemed like I was always doing something like that. But when that twisted for me, I guess I can be honest and say it was about 5 years before I really realized you really gotta pick it up and keep going. Even though I was
mm,
doing it, I wasn't doing it with a passion. I was
mm,
mad. I was upset because my life wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. I was upset
mhm,
because I didn't have the money that I needed. But I was almost like I was driving this train, but it was that without passion. I think I
mm,
started realizing my passion for what I wanted to do and who I was, and that I didn't have to depend on anybody. And no matter what, I knew the universe was going to take care of me. So I
mm,
just went after it. So that's why I forget about the fact that I made that big twist. It was a really
yeah,
big change, but
yeah.
I guess it was pushing me. That was pushing me as well.
Oh, I think that's so good, mom, what you said. First, thank you for admitting and being vulnerable and admitting that it took time to go through the pain and anger of it all before you picked yourself up to the point of being able to say, "Okay, I'm not just gonna slog my way through
Mhm.
this anymore.
Yep.
I'm gonna actually actively pursue what it is that I want to pursue." And
Yeah.
obviously, as someone who is close to you, the slog was hard. It was hard to see you in the
Mhm.
slog because it's hard to see anyone in the slog. But my goodness, when you got through that slog, once you got through, it was like just a shift.
Yeah.
So, for context for other people, I've never known you until you I have never known you to not be in school.
That's
I
true.
don't like I really you were always taking one class at a time. I was just talking to someone the other day that has also taken their time to get through school, and she said, "Statistics, it's so hard." I said, "My mom took it 3 times." Like,
Yep.
I understand, but it was like you had I was gonna say for context, I got my bachelor's in 2005, and
Mhm.
Janelle got hers in 2006, and
That's
you
right.
got yours in 2007. Is that
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And
And
you
when
had
I
been
started,
Mhm.
when you guys were young. You were very
Yeah,
young when I started.
yeah. I don't have any conscious awareness of you being my mom without you being in school until recently.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So when you felt that shift after kind of moving through the pain, anger, grief of losing
Mhm.
your marriage,
Mhm.
when you felt that shift, what was it that you were determined to do?
I was determined to be independent.
Yeah.
That was my biggest determination, and that might sound weird to people, but I just wanted to be independent. I was, for the most part, when I was married, I was a stay-at-home mom most of the time. So everything I did and everything I had was connected to my marriage.
Mhm.
I felt like I had nothing for myself. And then when I left, I felt like I had nothing for myself. So my
Mhm.
biggest driver, my absolute biggest driver was to be independent. No matter what it took, I wanted to be independent.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think it's to my chagrin that I was like that, but I I said I just can't. I can't depend on somebody else for anything. I didn't want to ask for a nickel. I didn't ask, and went terribly into credit card debt. And had to learn
Mhm.
about money.
Mhm.
And, that was another learning curve, learning to live
Yeah,
within my
but
means.
one that you true to form championed and, like, I've never seen such an incredible turnaround from someone to really becoming financially literate and
Yeah.
changing the game and setting yourself up better than you ever could have. And thank you again for being real about that. I think a lot of people find themselves in financial situations that they can't figure out how to get out of, and they don't know how to ask for help to
Yeah.
figure out how to get out of them. And I remember I was going through a phase of my life where I was so into budgeting and
Mhm.
becoming more financially literate, and you let me do the painful thing of, like, let's look through
Mhm.
everything you've got. Like, let's look at every piece of your
Yeah.
financial life, and watching the way you dove into that process. You were so brave and so ready. And again, this is why I know you've taught me how to grow exponentially, because once you see something, once you decide you wanna grow in an area, you just always go for it. That's just who you are.
I have to
Okay.
say this true.
I have to say that's true. Yeah, 'cause it is. That's why you're the best. Okay, so I had cut you off though career-wise because I had to
Mhm.
remind you, you got divorced in between that. So I
Yeah.
think
There was a
somewhat
little thing
soon.
that happened.
Yeah, once you went through that, then you ended up, I think Edison was kind of the
Yeah.
big job after the divorce that you
Right.
landed for a while. And
Mhm.
then so what happened? Take us back then to where you were.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had a great career at Edison. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And, my supervisor decided to retire. And so when she retired, um, she was like the glue that held us together. And to be very vulnerable, I applied for her position because I wanted to keep our organization, our little organization running like it did. And actually there were 2 of us that applied for that position. And we had both told each other, the guy and I, were going to support each other no matter who gets the job. We just figured one of us would get it. Well, neither one of us got the position. Neither one of us
Mm,
got it. So it wasn't even that heartbreaking. It was like, okay, we let's just keep going. But the person that came in was she was just not good. She was not good for the our little organization, and it
mhm.
started falling apart.
Yeah.
Mostly though, it was the culture that started to get messed up,
Mm,
and people just weren't happy anymore. I didn't go to work happy, and I said, "You know what? I think I'm gonna try something else." So,
yeah.
big mistake, but I did it, and I'm gonna confess to it. I took a job that I had no idea what I was doing. It was an opportunity that I had. That was a great opportunity, and I ended up at a little school in Chatsworth where I was, um, of AVP of, strategic, something, I can't even remember. And I ended up being the AVP of student services. It was a little college, little college, and, within a year, I got fired. So
Mm,
that was really tough. It was
yeah.
tough for a lot of reasons. I felt like I didn't have any guidance. I personally, in retrospect, I jumped into something I had no idea what I was getting into. It
Yeah.
just turned out to be a mess. So,
Uh, but you know
that
what?
was
I love though that you did it. There were some good reasons why you made that move, why you made that leap. And I think even though it didn't work out, and again, this is why I feel like anyone who's listening to the like, this is the 3rd time that I'm saying thank you for saying that and for being vulnerable and saying that. But the truth is this is how we are and this is who you raised me to be, like an open book about and here's the truth about the things that have gone
Mhm.
on. But there are so many people right now who have been fired in the past, layoffs. I mean, who hasn't
Mhm.
been laid off? I never thought in my whole career, I never thought I would have been laid off from a job. And when you get laid off, especially all the mass layoffs that have happened over the last several years, it's so hard not to take those things personally
Very
because,
personally, yeah.
and I think watching you go through that was such an important learning experience for me because you're not always going to win. Sometimes you're going
Right.
to do something, go to a job and take an L, And sometimes it's because you didn't have what it took to do the job or you didn't have,
Mhm.
it can be that. And sometimes it's just because that's the thing that happened. It's not personal to anyone. It's just a thing that had to happen. And I think watching you go through that, I watched the stages of grief, right? Because I know when you took that role on, it was an executive role that you felt good about,
Mhm.
and you were probably way better at it than you thought you were, but there were decisions that needed to be made. But even still, I've watched you reflect on that throughout the years and change your feelings. The way you feel about it now is different than you felt, when you were in the thick of it then. You've allowed
Right.
yourself to grow from that experience. So, anyways, thank you for sharing that. So you
Sure.
took on that
Sure.
job. It didn't work
So I
out.
took on that job, didn't work out. I went back to Edison and did a few contracts at Edison, not as full-time permanent employee. And then I ended up at the other university as an advisor, a full-time permanent advisor.
Mhm.
That was fun. Thoroughly enjoy advising students. I knew academia was something I liked doing, but it was way too far away. Part of the time, the leadership was toxic, and then I got a good leader, and then it was just time to get back closer to home because I was driving all the way to Irvine. So I did that for a year
Yeah.
and a half. In between there, though, I started teaching. I started teaching
Okay, okay,
part
okay.
time.
I feel like this is the problem of me knowing so much of your life, at least the
What I
last
miss.
40 years. Well, let's get back into because we're getting into the weeds of your jobs, which is fine, but you said you were
Mhm.
determined to be independent. That was actually new to
Mhm.
me. I don't know that I think I realized that, but not really. In my mind,
Mhm.
when you well, no, that was definitely true. But what I saw in terms of your efforts throughout this
Mhm.
whole time was your determination to keep going to school. And you haven't
Mhm.
mentioned that. I mentioned I got my bachelor's in 2005,
Mhm.
Janelle 2006, you 2007, and then you kept going through this whole
Yeah.
time.
Right. Right.
So at some point, you got a master's, which enabled you to
Mhm.
start teaching, right?
Mhm. Yes.
When did you
I
get your
got my
master's?
master's I got my master I started in 2008 and finished in 2012. I was still at Edison at the time. Again,
Mhm,
because they were paying for my education, I'm like, "Why not? I'm gonna keep going. Why not? I'm gonna
mhm,
keep going." I had it in between there or real early in the process. I said, "You know what? I don't wanna teach little kids." So I actually went in and had it and talked to an advisor who said, "Well, looking at all the units that you have, you should probably get a bachelor's degree in business administration." So I switched from thinking about being a teacher and getting a credential to business administration because there was a time when I said, I just want to get my bachelor's degree. I want to get my AA and I'm going to get my bachelor's degree and then I'm done. But
mhm.
then in between there, I realized, first of all, I could teach with a master's degree at a college. And so I said, oh, I might as well get my master's. So I was still at Edison. They were still paying for it. And it wasn't until I got to ULV that I thought about the doctorate degree because I was ready to stop at the master's, but I knew I'd have a little more leverage to keep teaching, and I'd already
Mhm.
started teaching these too. I mean,
Mhm.
the day after I finished, I think I had just graduated with my master's. One of my favorite teachers in the master's program called me and said, um, she said, I have to give up a class. They're looking for somebody to teach this class. It would start in fall. She said, you could shadow me in summer. And I'm like,
Mhm.
sure, sure, sure. That was where my that's where the beginning was of me teaching. And I
Mhm.
loved it. I was like, this is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And that really was that just that quick.
Yeah.
I shadowed her, and then I had my own class, and I taught ever since then, and that was back in 2013 or 2012, something like 2012, I think it was.
Yeah.
But when I went to when I was in the job of being an advisor, I got an email saying that we could get 50% off of our to and get a doctorate degree, and I said,
Mm.
"Well, why not?" "Well, why
Yeah.
not?" Didn't
Yeah.
realize it was all a whole bunch of money, but well, what no, I just kept going, and I always feel myself to be a lifelong learner. I
Yeah.
want to learn all the time. I wanna read stuff that I don't know anything about, I wanna
Mhm.
observe things. I've always felt like I'm one of those people that knows a little bit about a lot of things, but not really the person that is an expert in something. Just a little bit
Yes.
about a lot of things because 'cause I'm just curious. So that's why I
But
kept going.
yeah, I just keep smiling listening to you because it just feels so appropriate. It feels so appropriate that I am this way about growth and to listen to
Mhm.
you saying, "I'm a lifelong learner."
Do I have
It's
that kind of
just
accent?
it's just you raised Janelle and me to be curious and
Mhm.
to keep learning. And you literally modeled the way to do that. You finished your doctorate in 2019.
I defended in 2019. Yeah.
You defended
Yep.
in 2019. And
Mhm.
that was something that it was in what you were at None and heard about that woman defending
Mhm. I
in,
heard about yep,
and
yep.
that was maybe 2002,
Mm.
2001,
Yeah. Yep, around there. It was
you
around
know?
then when I remember and I said, "What?" That was like, "What is she doing? What's she defending?" I didn't even know. I know nothing about
Yeah.
but they were making this big deal about it, and then I realized, "Oh, this is what a person does when they get a PhD."
Mhm, mhm. So,
Pretty
it's
wild.
interesting that you say that because I mean, I was the first in our extended family, I think I was the first woman to graduate from college,
Yep, yep.
and I knew nothing about college. And
Mhm,
this is just a plug for understanding that when you grow up in a marginalized group and you don't all have access to the type of experiences and certainly not education as others have, you go through the system not always knowing you don't know what it's about. I didn't even know what a master's degree was. I was the first person to go to college or to finish college in our family. I didn't know that there was more college. I wasn't exposed. I didn't know
mhm,
what that was all about. So to watch you navigate through and figure it out was just so powerful to me to watch. But anyways, now I'm getting sidetracked. So
sure.
you had started teaching, you had gone back
Mhm.
to Southern California Edison. Is that where we left off?
So I just kept teaching and I ended up on a last contract with Edison. These were times from that point on I was not a full-time permanent employee. So I was
Yeah.
also navigating life at the time, paying taxes because I was 1099, trying to
Yeah.
make sure I had health insurance, all this kind of stuff. So I was on my last contract at Edison and COVID hit. And
Mhm.
so right before COVID hit, when I was working in Irvine, met this young man he said, you teach for ULV, you should teach for APU. And I'm like, nah, I don't think so. And you had already told me the same thing. You should teach for APU. Nah, I don't know. So I was in my last contract at Edison and I was talking to this young man and I decided, you know what? APU is close to home. Why not? Probably be okay. So I sent an email to the guy I was talking about. He gave me a person's name, said, "Send her an email, tell her you're interested, send her your resume." So I did, and she called me. She called me almost right away, and she told me, she said, "I don't normally respond this quickly to, people who wanna teach," but she said something she said, "I feel like God told me to respond to you," you know?
Mm,
That was the essence of what she said. Anyway, from that point, I've been teaching for APU, and it started right in the middle of COVID. I
mhm,
went to my first class, which was in spring of 2020, and we all sat in the classroom. It was about 6 of us, a small class, and by the time it was time for the class to meet the next week, we went remote, and everything was just crazy.
mm,
So, that was the start, and I have been with APU ever since, and I love working for APU. It's great.
yeah,
It's just I like the feel of it. I get plenty of classes. I have a good relationship with the students. I missed them so much this summer for some reason. We
yeah,
just went back to school on Monday, and it was so good to be back and to see all their faces. And I feel
mhm,
I don't teach but a few classes, but this is something there I feel like I have reached where I'm supposed to be at this time in my life with these
yeah.
kids, and it's just great, just wonderful.
Y you Okay, this is so nice to be at this other end because I always call you a creative stay-at-home mom because you stayed home with us, then you worked at our school, then you stayed home with us, and once we were adjusted, you went and started working again. But I s I saw you as a career teacher. That's that's just how I
Mm,
thought of you because my little mind just saw you as a teacher. And then always I remember when you left. I'm getting choked up. I remember when you left teaching because you
mm,
stayed behind. I had gone to public school and Janelle was still at school with you. And she was finishing up the 6th grade and was gonna come to public school with me. And you left with her,
mm,
right? So that we would
right,
adjust.
mhm,
And I remember feeling I remember feeling grief for you and for the school and for the students because you were just so you were just it was so clear that you were doing what you were meant to do when you were teaching. And so now when my mom has me come to her classrooms, gosh, I'm a mess. I'm surprised I haven't lost it until this point. Um, Now when you have me come to your classes, and walking through campus, something you can't tell about my mom right now is she's 4'11", so she's this itty bitty little thing, and she's got this great little gray fro, and she's just scooting around campus walking with her little legs, and you hear people yelling out, "Professor Brown, Professor Brown." It makes me feel so it lights me up to see you back doing what you were always meant to do. And as you've told your story, you've always been in this learning, educating environment, no matter what job you took. And it feels so clear that you were meant to help people grow. And I know that's why your students love you now, is because you're not just teaching them, you're helping them grow. And one of the main ways that you do that is because you really care about people. You really see them. And as my mom, you really saw me. You just, you treated me and Janelle differently. You saw us as two different kids with two different needs and with different abilities and different skills. And whatever it took to help us grow into who we were meant to grow into, you were willing to do that. And I'm so grateful. And yeah, I always think to myself, if I could share you with the world, I would. Like, I see friends of mine who have either lost their moms or who just don't have great relationships with their moms. And I always think, come borrow mine for a little bit because she can never fill the void of the mom that you've lost. And she could never fill the void of the pain of having a mom that just didn't know how to be a great mom. But she can show you something about what it feels like. And she can see you the way a mom can only see their kid. So I'm so lucky to have you. I'm so lucky to grow from you. Let me ask you this before we go into rapid fire. If you were to
Mhm.
say how you've grown as a result of going through the painful decision to get divorced after 23 years of marriage, but then to shift into this life, what is the way that you would describe your growth?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think what I've grown the most in is self-confidence, knowing that I could be whatever I wanted to be, do whatever I wanted to do, and be somebody. I always wanted you guys when I was young, I said, "I wanna have kids that are gonna be, uh, benefit to society," and I've told you guys that before. I
Mm,
feel like now it's my turn to be a benefit to society, not through my
mm.
girls, but because I'm here for a purpose that my kids need me at school. That and
Oh,
that's what I think I would say.
I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna lose it. Oh my gosh. Well, you I've always been a benefit to society. Anyone who knows you knows that. You really, really always have. But I'm also so happy to hear you say that because you've got so much more to give and so much more life to live into. And so I I can't wait to see how you continue to contribute to this world. So, okay,
Thank you,
let's do
Shay.
You're welcome, mom. You're not a crier, but I'm a crier. You know what? My dad is a crier. That's who I get it
Yes.
from.
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. These are rapid fire. I know you don't know these. I think there's 9 of them. The first
Okay.
one is fill in the blank. Growth is
The best thing in the world.
hmm, what was the very first thing you realized you were good at? And I'm talking like as a child.
Sports.
Oh, what sports were you good at?
Whatever Roger did, wanted to do it and do it better. I was throwing a football, running out in the street, doing all this stuff with my brother.
I love
Yep.
that. What was your very first job?
Bob's Big Boy. I was a
That's
hostess
right.
at a little burger place.
That's right, Bob's Big Boy. Um, what's something that you're trying to learn right now?
Spanish.
Oh, yeah, I need to hop on that train with you. I really do. What's something you're trying to unlearn?
Ooh. I'm getting a little lazy sometimes. So I'm trying to unlearn that little laziness and keep pushing no matter what.
Yeah, that's good. Well, do you mind if I ask your age in public?
Not at all. I'm 69. I'll be 70 in March.
Holy monkeys. That is wild. And, I like you know how me and Janelle are always we're always pushing our mom to stay active and doing her thing, which isn't hard. She has more energy than I do, but I can appreciate you continuing to push yourself to
Mm.
not be there. Though you deserve to take breaks for sure, without a
Okay.
doubt.
Okay.
What's a book or movie that changed your life?
I think one of the movies that changed my life, I don't know if changing my life is a good way of putting it, but Tombstone. The reason why I love Tombstone is because it's about relationships and how
Mm,
significant and important relationships are. I mean, maybe most people probably don't look at Tombstone that way, but that's the way I looked at it. And I just have a real passion for relationships with people, good
yeah.
relationships, family members, good friends. So I would say it was Tombstone.
That is so funny that you mentioned that movie because one of my favorite things growing up, we weren't allowed to watch many movies and many movies were not appropriate for us to watch, but I loved coming and sitting in your bathroom and you would tell me the stories of the movies that you had watched.
Mhm.
You know, you go through the play by play of everything that happened. And I've still not seen Tombstone, but I remember vividly the day you told me about that story because you loved that movie. You were
Yep,
just so into it. Okay, I like that. Okay, when growth feels good, how do you celebrate?
that's a good question. When growth feels good, how do I celebrate? That is a good question because I don't really know. I feel like I grow a lot, and maybe I'm just celebrating because I'm singing and dancing around the house because everything feels good, but I don't have any. I can't say I go out and do this or I go buy myself
Yeah,
this or I do this. I don't know. I just think what happens when I'm happy and I feel like I did something and I grew, I just get excited. I'm more excited. I act more excited. I don't know.
yeah. No, I think that's good. I also think one of the ways that you do this without even knowing it is because you always talk about just you say it just like this too. I just sit in my little house and I just think about how grateful I am. And I
Yeah,
think that
I
yeah,
do. Mhm.
that's just part of
Yep.
your that's just
Yep.
part of your way of being.
That's every morning. That's every
Yeah,
morning. Mhm.
yeah. When growth feels hard, how do you take care of yourself?
Lately, I have made sure when things feel a little rough to continue to work out, to do my
Mhm.
exercise, um, laugh, to laugh. I love to laugh every night, especially when things are kinda hard. I'll make
Yeah.
sure I watch Golden Girls or something to make me laugh.
Yeah. Golden Girls will always make you laugh. It's
Mhm. No
really
matter how
hard
many
to
times you see
Sophia's gonna come through with something to make you laugh.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. When you grow all the way up and leave this life, what will you congratulate yourself on?
On never quitting,
Mhm.
never quitting,
Yeah,
always
yeah,
making it happen, always being a shaker and a mover,
yeah.
and being
You
a
are
risk
that.
taker, a
Mm,
risk taker.
yeah. You've done that. You've taught us how to do that. And I'm so grateful for you. And I hope that everyone listening gets to see just a morsel of anything anything good that you might think about me is because of you. And so I just love you so much, mom. Thank you for being
I
my
love
mom.
you too, Sheree. Thank you
All
for
right.
being my king. You and Janelle are the best.
Well, we try. We do the best we can, as grandpa would say. All right, everyone. Love you. See you next time.